Let's get into it. Number 10. Extreme atmospheric conditions. Saturn is a gradient of lethal forces. The upper clouds are painfully cold. But as you sink, the pressure spikes into realms that break the laws of conventional chemistry. When NASA dropped a probe into Jupiter, it survived for about an hour before melting in a massive heat spike. A probe dropped into Saturn faces a much stranger, much slower death. First, it hits the ammonia ice clouds. Here, temperatures are minus 250 degrees Fahrenheit. This paralyzing cold causes severe thermal shock. It makes aerospace-grade metals as brittle as glass. As the descending probe sinks further, it passes through thick clouds of ammonium hydrosulfide. This layer smells intensely like rotting eggs. More importantly, it is highly corrosive. It eats through exposed wiring and degrades thermal blankets in a matter of minutes. Then, the crushing pressure begins. At a depth of 1,000 kilometers, the atmospheric pressure is equal to the bottom of the Mariana Trench on Earth. But you are not even close to the core. You are barely scratching the surface of the atmosphere. At 10,000 kilometers down, the pressure forces the hydrogen gas into a supercritical fluid. It is neither a true gas nor a true liquid. Your probe is now acting like a submarine trying to navigate through a dense, boiling ocean of liquid hydrogen. The physical friction alone would rip external sensors right off the hull. At 30,000 kilometers, the pressure reaches 2 million times Earth sea level. The physics change entirely. The liquid hydrogen turns into a liquid metal. It conducts electricity like a copper wire. It generates massive magnetic fields. Your probe would be crushed to the size of a golf ball, melted by the thousands of degrees of ambient heat, and then chemically dissolved into the metallic ocean. It is a one-way trip into a crushing electric void. Deeper down, helium separates from the hydrogen. Because helium is heavier, it falls as a continuous liquid rain. This bizarre process releases immense friction and heat. It feeds the terrifying storms from the inside out. It fundamentally changes the magnetic behavior of the entire planet. Metallic hydrogen conducts electricity. It powers the magnetosphere directly from the core. It is a closed loop of absolute destruction. There is no quick plunge to a solid surface. There is no short trip home. There is just a slow, rising furnace that crushes, burns, and dissolves anything human engineers could possibly build. If you sent a heavily armored titanium submarine into this deep ocean, it would not just implode. It would literally dissolve into its base elements. Number 9. Violent winds and megastorms. On Earth, a Category 5 hurricane produces winds of 250 kilometers per hour. They destroy cities and reshape coastlines. Saturn's equatorial jet stream blasts at 1,800 kilometers per hour. That is significantly faster than the speed of sound. These supercharged winds do not face any friction from solid ground, mountains, or oceans. They just keep accelerating in an endless, frictionless loop. And they breed absolute monsters. Every 20 to 30 Earth years, Saturn experiences a terrifying seasonal anomaly known as the Great White Spot. In 2010, amateur astronomers noticed a bright white cloud forming on Saturn. Within months, it exploded in sheer scale. The storm grew so rapidly that it wrapped entirely around the massive planet. The head of the storm eventually caught up with its own tail, consuming itself in a vortex of violence. The Cassini probe monitored this beast from orbit. The internal lightning flashes were 10,000 times stronger than anything ever recorded on Earth. They were striking 10 times every single second. The radio static from this lightning was deafening to Cassini's sensors. These megastorms act like massive, planetary-scale vacuum cleaners. They pull heavy elements like liquid water and dense ammonia from thousands of kilometers deep, dragging them violently to the upper atmosphere. They create massive frozen mushballs of ammonia and water that plummet back down like heavy artillery fire. The weather does not just ruin a probe's sensors. It physically batters the hull out of the sky with the kinetic force of a meteor shower. Jupiter has a long-lived monster in one place, the Great Red Spot. You know where it is, and you can simply fly around it. Saturn is entirely different. It punches deep, violently erupts, and then rewrites its own atmosphere entirely. The weather here leaves chemical scars that last for centuries. It is completely, inherently unpredictable. And for any engineered probe, that sheer unpredictability is far more hazardous than a steady, localized storm. You simply cannot plan for a storm system that actively changes the base chemistry of the sky. Number 8. Unpredictable magnetic field. Jupiter is a highly radioactive planet, but it is fundamentally predictable. You know exactly where its primary radiation belts are. You can easily design a spacecraft trajectory to avoid the worst of them. Saturn is a shifting, dynamic, invisible hazard. Its massive magnetic field is nearly perfectly aligned with its spin axis. The tilt is less than 0.01 degrees. According to our current models of planetary dynamos in physics, this should be absolutely impossible. A perfectly aligned field cannot mathematically sustain itself over billions of years. Yet, Saturn does exactly that, breaking our understanding of planetary cores. This exact alignment creates a highly chaotic radiation environment. The vast rings and the dozens of icy moons orbiting Saturn act like giant cosmic sponges. They absorb passing radiation from the sun, but they are also active, unpredictable sources of it. The moon Enceladus constantly ejects water vapor into orbit. That water vapor becomes rapidly ionized by the sun. It turns into a massive, glowing torus of plasma that permanently surrounds the entire planet. This thick plasma gets trapped in the magnetic field and is accelerated to lethal relativistic speeds. The result is patchy, entirely unpredictable radiation belts. The Cassini probe discovered intense, hidden proton belts reaching deep into the inner system, exactly where a future probe would need to fly to study the rings. Furthermore, when deep space cosmic rays strike the solid ice boulders in the rings, they spawn highly charged secondary particles. The rings literally emit deadly gamma rays straight into the orbital path. This localized radiation slowly but surely bakes unshielded electronics. It creates localized static charges that arc and fry delicate scientific instruments. It masks critical communications with eerie, deafening radio bursts. Human engineers can easily shield against steady, predictable doses of background radiation. They cannot shield against a rapidly moving, moon-driven pocket of intense plasma radiation that lights up completely without warning. One day an orbital path is totally safe. The next day, a tiny moon injects a fresh cloud of ionized gas, and your billion-dollar spacecraft goes completely dark forever. Number 7. The Hexagon Storm. Jupiter's Great Red Spot is famous. It is an oval. It behaves like a somewhat normal, albeit massive, storm system, but Saturn hosts something far stranger and far more rigid directly at its north pole. It is a massive, mathematically precise, six-sided storm. It is a perfect hexagon in a universe that usually hates straight lines. The hexagon is 30,000 kilometers wide. You could easily drop two entire Earths inside it, side by side, and still have thousands of kilometers of room to spare. It is a perpetual meat grinder of atmospheric gas. It is bounded by a central jet stream blowing at over 500 kilometers per hour. Jupiter's polar cyclones are highly chaotic. They frequently merge, they violently split, and they constantly change shape. Saturn's hexagon maintains its rigid geometric shape for decades on end. It has absolutely not broken its six-sided structure since the Voyager probes first discovered it back in the 1980s. When the northern season recently changed, the entire storm changed color. It went from a pale, icy blue to a sickly golden yellow. This shift was entirely driven by intense photochemical hazes reacting to direct sunlight. Recent computer models suggest this is definitely not a mere surface feature. It extends thousands of kilometers deep into the crushing, pressurized interior. It acts like a deep-rooted, planetary-scale buzzsaw carving through the atmosphere. Any exploratory probe dropping into these northern latitudes would be instantly torn apart by the atmospheric shear lines. Engineers currently have absolutely no aerospace material that can withstand a 500 km per hour laminar flow of dense cryogenic gas. If you were sitting in a NASA boardroom right now, how would you even begin to design a structural shield for that kind of punishment? It is an impossibly stable, impossibly deep convection vortex. It proves once and for all that Saturn actively plays by rules of fluid dynamics that human science does not fully understand. Number 6. Toxic atmosphere. Saturn's air is not just gas. It is a moving, swirling chemical soup. The upper clouds are completely choked with dense ammonia, highly flammable methane, and extremely complex hydrocarbons. But the physical danger does not just come from below the clouds. The famous rings are actively spitting thick gunk directly into the upper sky. During its final, suicidal orbits, the Cassini spacecraft flew directly between the innermost rings and the planet itself. It physically tasted the atmosphere. It recorded heavy organics and water molecules raining down from the rings at an absolutely astonishing rate. Planetary scientists literally call it ring rain. Do not be fooled by the word rain. This is absolutely not clean water. It is a sticky, highly abrasive mixture of sharp silicate grains and heavy, tar-like organic molecules. This sludge falls into the upper atmosphere at a rate of thousands of kilograms every single second. During the violently convective megastorms, the ambient ammonia is trapped into dense, icy mushballs. These heavy chemical hailstones fall deep into the interior and stay there for decades, completely changing the local atmospheric pressure gradients in the process. Pure ammonia is highly toxic to human biology. Furthermore, it is deeply corrosive to aerospace hardware and sensitive optical lenses. Add the electrically charged dust from the moon Enceladus. Add the tiny, razor-sharp ice grains moving at high orbital speeds. The combined result is a constant, completely invisible abrasive bombardment on any ship entering the local system. Camera lenses rapidly haze over. Delicate optics fog up entirely with sticky, freezing organics. Expensive electronics are chemically attacked and degraded from the outside in. Saturn's majestic beauty hides an invisible, highly active chemical rain. It slowly, methodically eats human technology. A spacecraft flying through this would not just mechanically break, it would literally, chemically rot out of the sky. Number 5. A lethal ring system. The iconic rings are absolutely not a painted, peaceful backdrop. They are not solid, smooth tracks of ice. They are a high-speed, incredibly chaotic orbital minefield. They stretch out for hundreds of thousands of kilometers across the dark sky. Yet, in many places, they are only tens of meters thick. To put that in perspective, they are proportionally much thinner than a standard sheet of paper. The individual ring particles range wildly in size. You have microscopic, blinding dust. And you have massive, jagged, house-sized boulders of solid water ice. They all orbit the planet so incredibly fast that even a tiny millimeter-wide grain of sand becomes an unforgiving, high-caliber bullet. Cassini found that this tiny band of dust constantly falls into the planet, but it gets worse. Massive collisions within the dense rings frequently kick up hidden, newly formed moonlets. These tiny, jagged moons whip up intense gravity waves and pull the ice into narrow strands completely without warning. They aggressively pull the flat ice into towering, jagged vertical peaks that cast long, eerie shadows across the ring plane. Cosmic rays from deep space hit this ice constantly. They spawn deadly secondary radiation particles right inside the supposed safety of the ring gaps. For a fragile spacecraft, the orbital math is brutal and completely unforgiving. Just one single, invisible speck of ice hitting you at orbital velocity can instantly puncture a thermal sensor. It can permanently blind a navigation camera. It can instantly shred a pressurized titanium hull. When Cassini executed its famous grand finale dive directly through the ring plane, it literally had turned its massive high-gain radio antenna completely forward. It used the main communications dish as a physical, sacrificial shield against the oncoming hail of ice bullets. There is simply no safe, easy shortcut through the rings. If you fly anywhere near them, you risk getting violently shredded into useless scrap metal. Number 4. Hostile moons and geysers. The moon Enceladus looks like a completely harmless ball of ice. It is highly reflective, perfectly white, and extremely cold. Do not let the serene visuals fool you. It is definitely not harmless. Cassini famously caught it actively blasting massive columns of liquid water and solid rock hundreds of kilometers into space directly from its fractured south pole. Over 100 individual geysers constantly erupt along deep, parallel tectonic fractures known to scientists as tiger stripes. These violent plumes do not just carry water. They carry heavy salt, complex organic molecules, and tiny silica sand grains moving at supersonic speeds. It is an incredible direct window into a hidden, warm underground ocean. It is arguably one of the absolute best places in the solar system to look for alien microbial life. But it is also a lethal gauntlet for any robotic explorer. If you deliberately fly through a plume, you can collect vital ocean chemistry. However, if you fly through the wrong, dense part of the plume, high-speed ice grains will instantly pit your optical lenses. They will violently abrade your carefully engineered thermal coatings right down to the bare, exposed metal. Tiny rock fragments, carried all the way up from the deep ocean floor, can easily gouge a radiometer or completely destroy a delicate chemical instrument. Furthermore, the plume jets are notoriously patchy. They constantly change intensity based on the moon's eccentric orbit around Saturn. A flight route that was perfectly safe yesterday can completely vanish between orbital passes. The moon basically hands you the very best clue to alien life in a frozen cup. Then, it aggressively dares you to try and drink from it without completely destroying your ship. Number 3. The Gravitational Architect. Jupiter always gets the popular credit for steering dangerous cosmic traffic. But looking at the orbital math, you could easily argue Jupiter is actually lazy. Saturn is the real hidden puppet master of the outer asteroid belt. Saturn is an invisible architect of risk. It quietly, methodically controls the ultimate fate of millions of massive rocks in the outer solar system. When planetary orbits naturally shift over time, Saturn's immense gravity can easily trap distant asteroids in complex orbital resonances. It actively pumps up their eccentricity. It slowly, inevitably alters their paths until they cross the orbits of other major planets, eventually flinging them like cosmic darts into the inner solar system. During the chaotic early days of our solar system, Saturn helped fling massive icy objects inward. This process delivered vital water to Earth, but it also caused massive planetary-scale bombardments that melted entire crusts. Today, its immense gravity still subtly nudges rogue comets and icy centaurs onto new, incredibly dangerous flight paths. There is a specific, well-known gravitational sweet spot called the Nu 6 resonance. Saturn plays a huge, dominant role in pushing stray rocks completely out of the asteroid belt and sending them hurtling toward Earth. Depending entirely on the cosmic timing, Saturn can act as a massive shield, absorbing direct hits. But just as easily, it acts as a gravitational lever that aims city-killer impactors right at our fragile home planet. True planetary risk is not just about local radiation and storms. It is about long-term, invisible gravity. From a billion miles away, Saturn regularly pulls the trigger on potential extinction-level events. Number 2. Eerie radio emissions. Saturn does not just physically glow in the dark, it actually sings. The Cassini probe recorded an endless chorus of strange tones, high-pitched whistles, and long, slow beats operating in the deep radio spectrum. Scientists officially call it Saturn kilometric radiation. When these ambient radio waves are directly converted to audible sound, the result is deeply haunting. It sounds exactly like a vintage 1950s horror movie soundtrack, endlessly echoing through the vacuum of space. The North and South poles actually broadcast slightly different repeating periods. Even more bizarre, those rhythmic beats physically drift with the changing seasons and the raging storms. They independently speed up and slow down over time. Scientists strongly believe this noise comes from highly charged electrons spiraling violently along magnetic field lines just above the glowing auroras. But the timing stubbornly refuses to match a single, solid rotation of the planet's rocky core. The radio source actually moves around the planet entirely independently of the physical spin. Sudden, deafening radio bursts always mean sudden lethal particle injections. This massive electromagnetic interference can easily confuse standard spacecraft instruments. It permanently masks the incredibly weak radio signals sent back to Earth, making vital communications totally impossible during critical orbital maneuvers. Worse, the surrounding plasma environment is totally unpredictable. We still do not fully understand the complex quantum plasma processes actively driving it. The massive planet constantly broadcasts in a chaotic language we simply cannot read. That total uncertainty is a massive, lingering hazard for any automated navigation system. Number 1. Extreme decade-long seasons. Jupiter is a steady-state hazard. Its axial tilt is only 3 degrees. Its climate is wildly violent, but it is reliably stable year-round. You know exactly what you are getting into when your ship arrives. Saturn has an extreme axial tilt of nearly 27 degrees. This severe angle triggers violent, highly unpredictable seasonal shifts. And because Saturn orbits so incredibly far from the Sun, these brutal seasons last for over 7 Earth years each. As Saturn slowly orbits, its massive opaque rings cast vast, shifting shadows over the northern and southern hemispheres. This actively creates unnatural, planet-wide temperature crashes. Entire planetary regions are suddenly plunged into a deep chemical freeze simply because the icy rings temporarily blocked the faint sun. When a 7-year winter sets in, or a rare equinox hits, the entire atmosphere completely changes its behavior. It spawns those terrifying planet-circling megastorms. It causes massive, unmapped chemical upheavals deep in the gas layers. Previously safe flight paths instantly vanish. Predictable weather patterns dissolve into total fluid chaos. For any long-term exploratory mission, this is an absolute engineering nightmare. You cannot simply wait out the bad weather. A single brutal season easily outlasts most spacecraft battery lifespans. The exact environment you carefully engineered your multi-billion-dollar probe to survive will completely rewrite itself as the massive planet tilts on its axis. Saturn is not just a planet. It is a slowly ticking seasonal time bomb waiting for a target. So here is the ultimate engineering question for the comments below. If you had a guaranteed one-way ticket and you had to choose between diving into the crushing radioactive depths of Jupiter's Great Red Spot or being slowly shredded by the cryogenic winds of Saturn's Hexagon, which way are you going out? Drop your choice down below.